So the first thing that I like to do whenever I finish up with the object that I want to make a mold of is I like to make the mold base. I've been using a lot of EVA foam for this lately because it's cheap, it's accessible, it's what I've got on hand, and I always have weird sized scraps of it that I can definitely use to make molds, if not for other things. I've also been in the habit of using weldwood to attach the item that I'm making a mold of to my EVA foam base. I've found really that it just helps prevent any sort of leaks or cracks where silicone could seep underneath my item to potentially mess up my mold. Since I knew that it takes about 2 or 3 minutes for contact cement to get tacky so you can adhere the objects together, I tried to be efficient and I set those aside and started working on cutting out the EVA foam walls for my mold. They don't need to be perfectly straight, so don't worry too much about that. As long as you have something that you can attach to your EVA foam base that's going to hold the silicone in and that you can use reliably, you're going to be pretty good. Occasionally, I like to sort of do little test fits just to make sure I've cut enough strips. That way, once I start gluing things together, I don't have to stop what I'm doing to then cut more strips. It's just kind of an efficiency thing. It's not required if you just want to wing it and go for it. I mean, you live your life, but once my item and my foam are tacky, before I glue the walls on, I attach my item to the foam. I prefer doing this before doing the walls, that way I can try to remove any excess width or length from my mold, and I can try to get it as center as possible. After it's been applied, I then start gluing on my walls. So I love using hot glue. I feel that when I'm working with EVA foam for this, hot glue forms a really, really nice seal, especially if you get it all along the edges that they're going to adhere to. That'll prevent the silicone from leaking out of the mold box onto your table or your floor or your counter or whatever you're working on. Also, don't forget, glue your walls together. You don't want to have leaks out the sides where your silicone can get out and, as aforementioned, destroy your counter or table. After I get my walls together, I also try to run hot glue along all of the internal and external seams just to help get myself really covered. But you are now ready to start molding. So I feel like I'm going to sound like an idiot or make you feel like an idiot, and I really hope it doesn't come out this way. The big thing when it comes to molding and casting is to read the directions and follow them step by step. You want to be as precise as possible. You want to make sure that you have tools that are going to allow you to measure as precisely as you can. And you want to just follow these steps. If you don't, your shit's going to get messed up. Another thing of note, and you can see me doing it here, is if you're using a digital scale, make sure that you zero your scale with your cup on it. For this project, I'm using silicone that I already had on hand, which is Mold Max 60. It's really not the best choice for this, but why waste the money getting another silicone when this one will do the job just fine. This is a silicone that requires a 100 part A to 3 part B mix, so I used my scale to try and get as close as I possibly could to those measurements. And you really want to make sure, like I said, that you're following those instructions, and the instructions for your silicone may change depending on the chemical makeup of it. You can find information for the manufacturer's website, or they should provide instructions for you in your kit. Once you've measured out the amounts of silicone that you need for your project, you're going to need to stir. Stirring your silicone is such an important thing, and do not overlook it. If that manufacturer recommends you stir for 3 to 5 minutes, you should stir for 6 just to make sure. I say that half jokingly, always look over and see what their recommended pot life is. But the more that you're stirring, the more you're scraping the sides, the more you're getting the bottom, the more that silicone's going to get mixed, and it's going to cure more thoroughly and more consistently, which is key. You don't want to have a silicone that's undermixed that's just not going to cure. You'll ruin your object and you'll have wasted time and money, and nobody wants to do that. And now comes the first moment of truth. I've found, and what I've read online when doing my own research and with working with silicones here and there throughout my little cosplay career, if you want to call it that, is the best thing to do with silicone and resin to minimize air bubbles, which could ruin the item that you're casting or the mold that you're working on, is to pour it from a very, very high point, very, very slowly, and you want to start on a corner that's not on the object and allow the silicone to pour out over it. By doing a stream, it's all kind of coming together. You're minimizing any air bubbles that might have gotten trapped in a large glob of silicone that could have come out, and you're just allowing things to move slowly at their own pace, which is really important. Something that you'll read people say on the internet, or you'll see them say in their videos is, like you're hearing me say it right now, is to tap on the table around your object. What this does is it helps dislodge any air bubbles that may be stuck or are kind of coming up to the surface, and it helps bring them up faster. You can even see some of them popping literally as I'm tapping on my object. It's really satisfying, and I don't know, it's kind of therapeutic. All right, and once you're done tapping out whatever metal song of your choice, time to remove your gloves. Did I say to have your gloves before? Because you totally should. This right here, this method of removing gloves, is something that I was taught in health class in elementary school to help keep your hands free of contaminants. It's really convenient, and I still do it to this day, obviously. All right, so my silicone has cured. My item is now ready for me to start demolding it. I try to do this really carefully by sort of just picking a corner and peeling it back and carefully removing it. And here we are. Look at that thing go. Wow. When it comes to casting, a lot of the same rules do apply. You want to make sure that you're reading the instruction sheet and any manufacturer's details regarding your product, so that way you're following those instructions exactly as they're presented. Every single kit, like I mentioned, should have an instruction pamphlet, and if you've lost that pamphlet, the manufacturer's website should have that information for the particular resin or silicone that you're working with. I don't know about you guys, when it comes to resins, I find them to be so much messier than silicones, so always make sure that you are protecting your workspace, even if it's something that you don't think that you really need to care about, because resins and silicones both, those can be toxic chemicals. I have legitimately gotten chemical burns from working with expanding foams and resins. Please be careful, read instructions, wear your gloves, and follow the steps that are provided to you in your instructions. Seriously. So this particular resin called for equal parts A to equal parts B by volume. It's specified by volume, so I'm making sure that I'm measuring it out by volume and not weight. I actually did take the time and I measured both containers by weight, and there was a difference. So like I said, follow the instructions, because if I had just done it by weight, I would have messed up real bad. Once I had both parts measured out, it was then time to mix them together. I did so by putting them into a different cup, because I only had plastic cups that were disposable to mix them in. I need to get a silicone cup, that way I can just reuse it. But anyway, you put them in together, and you can add any colorants or dyes or luster powder or whatever you'd like at this point, and you can just start mixing. Once again, mix it as long as the instructions say. You do not want a resin that does not get mixed properly. It's not going to cure all the way, your mold will be ruined, and you're going to have a nasty, sticky, gross mess. Not that I know by personal experience, though. I've never accidentally undermixed my resins or silicones, and it's always been perfect every single time, and I've never had to spend too much money ever replacing a mold that I could have just mixed right the first time. No, never. When it comes to pouring my resins, I follow the exact same steps as I do when pouring my silicones. I keep them really high above my object, I pour them slowly, and I pour them in as steady a stream as I can possibly handle. Once again, it helps get rid of air bubbles, and it's really nifty. Feel free, make a mold and cast it and just glob all that resin in there, and let me know how it goes, I guess. Have fun. Also, the longer the time it takes for your resin to cure, the more time your air bubbles will have to come to the surface. If you have a resin that's transparent and it cures in 20 minutes, you're going to have a lot more air bubbles than one that would cure in 20 hours. Which is actually a big reason as to why a lot of transparent resins do have such long cure times. I don't think that I've really found one that I've gotten my hands on that has a cure time of less than 6 hours. And even then, 6 hours is pretty much the demolding time, but it still needs more time to really solidify. Something to think about. Also, at around this point, I realized that I should start having more fun with my little camera. So here's some close-ups of the air bubbles from this purple metal that I was casting. Look at, like, it looks really nice and clear when you first pour it, and then, like, you jumble it around, and they all start coming to the surface, and, like, you can see them pop. Ain't that so cool? So once it's time to demold, I'm usually very gentle with my items. I never just rip them out of the mold. I try to break the suction seal and kind of let it release naturally on its own. I don't ever want to overwork things just in case they're not as cured as I thought they were. But look at that. Wow, you have molded and cast in an item, and it looks really nice. But the best part of making a silicone mold is that you can reuse it and reuse it and reuse it. Each different kind of silicone will have different use limits, I guess you could say. Once again, your instruction card or the manufacturer's website should be able to give you a rough estimate of how many molds and casts it can take before it starts to deteriorate. Mold Max is a very, very sturdy silicone. It's actually meant for really high temperature, like pewter and aluminum and tin casting, which is what I initially got it for. But yes, some will last much longer than others. Please keep that in mind when figuring out what silicone you want to use. But yeah, like I said, I realized that my camera can do some nice things, so I kind of went a little overboard and made a little bit of a gratuitous montage of these little medals that I cast that, like, honestly are good, but they're not like the coolest things in the world that I've cast, but I was really excited and really proud of them. So I hope you like my little boring video of my little things coming together, because I don't know, man, I liked making it. And shit, oh god, it's my outro. Oh no, I'm looking at it again, and oh god, it's rotating and it's kind of hypnotizing. And I guess subscribe and like and follow me on Instagram, because that's really where I post aside from YouTube. Bye!